Okay, so let's do a video here on the Fibonacci assignment. I'm going to go ahead and download this file, and I'm going to open it. And, oh man, really? 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 Well, let me, let's see, well, let me run. Okay, let's see if this works. Here's the tasks for the assignment. Leonardo Fibonacci, 13th century Italian mathematician, considered by many to be the most talented Western mathematician of the Middle Ages. We thank him for moving the Western world from Roman numerals to Arabic numerals that we use today. The following sequence is named for him, and this is the sequence: 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144. You might ask, what in the world is that sequence? Let's find out. This sequence is called the Fibonacci sequence, and any numbers in the sequence are called Fibonacci numbers. The sequence is calculated as follows. The first two numbers are given. Okay, so the first two numbers are 0 and 1. Each subsequent number is the sum of the preceding two. So the third number, 1, which is this 1, is the sum of 0 and 1. The fourth number, 2, is the sum of 1 and 1. The fifth number, the 3, is the sum of 2 and 1, etc., etc. In the workbook named Fibonacci Sequence, which is what we have here, you'll find a module named Solution. The sub-procedure should be named Make Fibonacci. Here it is right here. Inside the solution, let's see, I got too many open. Inside the solution macro. Got one finished already. Okay, I'm going to comment out this message box because it says be sure to remove the following statement before submitting your solution. So I'm just going to comment that out. And it says modify this procedure so the first 50 numbers are displayed starting from the active cell and going down one number per cell. Your solution should write values to cells, not formulas. Okay, so we're doing values to cells. Do your calculations in VBA. That is, your code should write values to cells, not formulas. Your code should not change which cell is active. Instead, it should just refer to the appropriate cells and write the correct numbers. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. And probably what we need to do first is, we know we're going to have a loop because we need to do this for a certain number of numbers, probably a lot. So let's go ahead and create a counter, as it were. We'll create a, let's do a first number in the sequence. And we'll create a second number and then a third number. We'll see how we do. And then a second. And then we could do a third. Sure. Let's do a next. And then why don't we also add here? I'll go ahead and add a start cell as a range object. Okay, so we have I as integer. This is going to be our counter as we do our loop through all 49 numbers. We have our first number here, a second number, and our next number. Now, I happen to know, you may run into this problem. I happen to know that we do need to use doubles here because these numbers get big within the first 49, 50 numbers when we start adding them up. And so if we just use a single here, or even a long, we're not going to have enough accuracy that we need. So a double provides us enough of the accuracy of the number in the memory, right? So we don't need a double for the first, the 0 and the 1, but as we get to the end of our loop, we're going to need these to be double types of a double to be able to account for the size of that number. Okay, so there's our initial variables that we'll need. Let's start with the active cell. Active cell. Start with active cell. So I'm just going to make a little comment here that kind of explains the code as I go. And I'm going to use the word set, and I'm going to do start cell. And I'm going to say, let's make that the active cell. Or let's make the active cell the start cell. That's what that is. And then let's go ahead and say, let's do the first numbers. First numbers of the sequence. First two numbers of the sequence. We know that the first number is equal to 0. We know that the second number is equal to 1. And so we can just write those in the spreadsheet. Why not? And we'll do the start cell dot values. That's wherever the active cell is. Right now it's in D4. We'll put the first number. And then we'll do the second number. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to use a command called offset. And I believe some have seen this before. We're going to offset from the active cell one row. So the first input is the row. Offset is the first number is the row offset. We're going to do one row offset. We're going to go down one row. We're going to do the same column. So we're going to put a 0 there. And the value of that cell is going to be second number. Okay. So if we run this so far, oh, macros are disabled in this project. Oh, man. Stand by. I probably have to restart my file. Okay. If I run this now, we should see 0 and 1 inside the active cell. So there it is. So when I run this, let me delete these again. And if my active cell is D4, and if I hit F8, if I put my cursor in the sub somewhere, and just hit F8, which is the equivalent of this step into option here, it will run it line by line, and it will run this sub, and it's over. So far, we have created our variables, and we have added the first two numbers to our active cell, and the one below it. Now we need to do the rest of the sequence, which is the next 48 numbers, right? Let's write some comments here to describe what we're going to do next. Next 48 numbers in the sequence. And it's really, the comments are not, they're not read by the grader, they're not read by Excel. The comments are really just for people who are going to come in here, even myself, in a couple months down the road if I needed to understand what was going on or copy and paste this into a new program. It's just for my benefit or for somebody else's benefit who comes in and looks at the code. So let's create a loop to be able to continue to go down this row. And let's do a for loop. This is where we'll use the I. And this is an interesting, where should we start the I? If we start at 1, where do we end up? Because we already have these two numbers here, we could go 1 to 48. Let's go ahead and try that. Let's see where that puts us at. I'll go down to the bottom of the loop and put next. So that's where I'll do my next. What we need to do next is calculate the next value, or the next number in this case, right? And then after the calculation, we just need to put it into Excel. So we're not doing any formulas in Excel. We are doing the formulas here in VBA, and we're simply putting these numbers into Excel. So the next number, we already have that variable created, is going to be the first number plus the second number. Not too terrible, right? Let's go ahead and write that to the sheet. And we can do that with start cell dot offset. Now what we can do here is we can offset a certain number of rows based on the number in the sequence. So we have our counter here, I 1 to 48. We could use I, but the problem is if we just use I, we're going down only 1 this first time, if we set it to 1, right? So what if we did I and we started I at 2? Then what we could do is we could offset 2 rows the first time we run this loop, which is what we need, because we already have the first 2 numbers in the spreadsheet. We actually need to go down 2 rows. 1, 2 is where we want to put our first value from this loop, right? So if we offset I rows, 0 columns, that value is going to be the next number. How about that? And then what do is we update the first and second number for the next iteration. Will that work? Let's try. Update first and second nums. So what does that look like? Well, let's see. First number is going to be the second number. And the second number is going to be the next number. Is that right? Because we have our next number here. The next number is the first plus the second. And the second is going to become the first. So yeah, I think that's right. We're updating these numbers. If we go to the next number, I is going to be 3. Let's just try this out. What do you say we just try it out? And I'll put a stop in here so we can stop it on the first loop. Okay, so we're going to put in the 0 and the 1, which are already there. We're going to start the loop now. So we have I is equal to 2. When you add these up, next number is going to be 1. Hasn't run yet. So next number is now 1. And now it's going to put 1 into, let's see where it puts it. So if I were to copy this and put it in the immediate window and say, okay, what is that value right now? Let me just look at I. What is I? I is 2. So if we offset 2, it's going to go down 1, 2. Notice it's not selecting it. Offset, what's the difference here between offset and a select is offset is just offsetting. It's not reselecting. We're actually not moving our cursor down. We're not selecting that cell. We're offsetting, which is an advantage. So we're not moving our selection at all, but we are offsetting from where the active cell is. So if I hit F8 here, it should put the number 1 into cell D6. Ready, go. I'll hit F8. There it is. And now we're going to update. The second number is going to become the first number, and the next number is going to become the second number. In this case, they're the same. and we've stopped it. Okay, so let's do the next one. What happens if we go next? Next, I is now 3. So we have incremented to 3. Our first number is 1. Our second number is 1. So our next number should be 2, right? Well, after we run that line. I is now 3, so we're going to go down 3 lines, 1, 2, 3. The value of that cell, which is currently empty, is going to be 2, which is 1 plus 1. And there it is. Then we're going to update the first and the second number. So second number becomes first number, next number becomes, or the first number becomes the second number. The second number is the next number. And then we'll go to the next iteration. I'll just go ahead and take out the stop. I'll just comment that out. And let's do this a couple more times and see what happens. And then I'll hit F5 and we'll see where we end up at the end of this loop. So here we go for I is 4. And here is 5. And here's a couple more I's. Let's see now, where are we at? What's I right now? I is 9. What does that mean? That means this is the 9th time through this loop. And it's also the 9th row that we're going. So one of the big advantages of having an I equals 2 here, starting with 2, is it allows us to use the offset, to use the I as part of the offset. We can use that same counter to offset how many columns we go down. Okay, this looks to be doing pretty good. 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 5 is 8, 8 plus 13 is 21. So why don't we go ahead and hit F5 at this point, or the play button, and let's see if we get all 50 or see where we end up on the numbers in the sequence. And I've commented out my stop. So if I hit F5, this should run through the rest of the sub. Okay. And there's some numbers all the way down. And the question now is, how many numbers are there? This says there's 49. Okay, so we are actually one number short because we're looking for the first 50 numbers. So I'm going to increment our loop to 49. I'm going to delete these numbers, and I'll pick another active cell. We'll come over here to C3 and see if we can use C3 with this. Let's see if we get the 50 numbers using this code. I'll come up here and hit play. We've got some numbers, and let's see how many we have. We've got 50, so there we go. We've got 50 Fibonacci sequence numbers. And let me go ahead and save this, and then let me go ahead and submit. There's the button to run it. I could run it again in a different active cell. I could do it right next to it. And that looks like it's all correct. And let's go ahead and submit it, make sure this submission works, and see what we get. And we're good to go. Okay, so that is where we're at for the homework. Let me know if this helps. Let me know if you have any other questions, and we'll see you soon.